What's the range you got on that thing, Brad?
Probably from the tower, the entire field.
Yep.
What's up, Nerfers? Today I'm taking a look at the Kirin Type-A, which is a shell ejecting or angled Talon mag accepting bolt action Nerf sniper. The original 3D printed version, which you may have seen before, was designed by Shellington Labs. This version though is injection molded and was produced by Phantom Toys, who sent me this one for review. There's a few other places you can buy it besides Phantom Toys, such as Blastertech here in Australia, or alternatively Shellington themselves or Frontline Foam if you're in the USA. I'll put a few different links down below. Now this might not be so surprising to hear, but I've never actually reviewed a shell ejecting blaster before. I've been offered a few, but as cool as they look, I don't believe shell ejecting blasters are very practical. Luckily though, the Kirin has the ability with a few optional parts to take angled Worker Talon mags. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have even reviewed it. Regardless of whether it uses talons or shells though, this is a bolt action only blaster. Pull back on the handle to manually prime each shot. The Kirin has takedown pins, a feature you might be familiar with if you've ever used a jet blaster seeder. Removing the two longer pins near the magwell and one shorter pin up top, you can separate the front and the rear of the blaster. This allows you to do a few different things, but first and most simply, you can flip the bolt across to the other side if you want to swap which hands you're priming the blaster with. If you also want the spent shell casings to eject from the other side, you'll need to move this metal bracket as well. Plus, there's an extractor internally on the bolt, which you'll also need to swap which side that's on. Probably the more common reason you'll be opening the Kirin though is to swap out the spring. Phantom Toys provided me with 3 different springs, a 1.6, a 1.8 and a 2.0, and I'll chrono all of those for you in just a moment. To make reassembling the blaster much simpler, I'd suggest pushing the plunger rod down until it catches with your newly installed spring, then reassemble the blaster. And then to release the pressure on the spring, just fire a dart to deprime it and you're good to go. Up front, there's an optional orange coloured mock suppressor. If you're using a scar barrel of any kind, I'd probably leave this off. I don't think they'd play well with each other. Unless you have a very skinny scar barrel that'll somehow fit inside of that. All of the ones I have though, you'd have to choose one or the other. Underneath the front end, there's a lower Picatinny rail where you could add attachments like a vertical grip or a flashlight. You don't really need a vertical grip though, because this is a bolt action blaster. On the sides, there are M-lock slots, and up top, there's a full-length Picatinny rail for adding a sight. Switching ends, the rear buttstock end of the blaster is non-adjustable. I found it was a good length for myself, but perhaps if you're shorter, it may seem a bit long for you. Also, if you aren't human, make sure you heed this warning on the side of the blaster. Some other text on the sides includes Shellington blasters further forward from that, and the text 13x36 fly point, which is the shells that it takes. On the other side, it says MHP Arms Company, and it has the name of the blaster Kirin Type-A further forward of that. If you've got pretty large hands, I can see the support beam at the bottom possibly hitting your wrist when holding the blaster. For me, it was noticeable, but not very uncomfortable. In the shell ejecting config, the mags hold 7 shots. The shells are pretty easy to load. I was even able to do it one-handed while holding the magazine steady with my other hand. The magazine itself loads pretty intuitively, though the mag lips have some pointy edges to them, so just be careful of that and don't cut yourself on them. It only goes into the magwell one way around, and when empty you just push on the mag release and pull to swap mags. The Kirin comes with 2 mags, a clear one and an orange one, and a total of 20 shells, so enough to load both mags and you have some extras. With the magazine loaded up, let's see how the Kirin performs firstly on the strongest of the 3 included springs. The 2.0 spring.
246, 245, 246, 242, 249, 246. Duplicate 246. That's all 7 shots.
With the 2.0 spring, we got a high of 249, low of 242, and an average of 245, with a standard deviation of 2. I don't think I've ever seen a Nerf blaster shoot a standard deviation of 2. That's some insane consistency. An average of 245 feet per second for a shell ejecting blaster is pretty impressive too. Must have some pretty good air seals in there. Though, I would save your applause for later, because when I swap this thing to Talons, I have an even stronger spring and longer barrel to try. For now, let's try the middle of the 3 springs, the 1.8.
198. 190. Duplicate 190. 188. Duplicate 188. 191. 181. And that's all the 7 shots.
With the included 1.8 spring, we got a high of 198, low of 181, average of 189, and a standard deviation of 5. Again, another very consistent velocity. An average of 189 from the 1.8 spring could be useful to some of you who play with 200 feet per second limits. Finally, for the chrono testing of the shell ejecting config, let's try the weakest spring the Kirin comes with before converting it to angled Talon mags. This is the 1.6 spring.
102. 89. 83. 83 again. 95. 94. 74. And that's all 7 shots from the baby spring.
With the 1.6 spring, I got a high of 102, low of 74, average of 88, and a standard deviation of 9. Okay, so this blaster's capable of shooting as low as stock Nerf levels. This would be pretty useful if you're buying this for a young child to shoot around the house or something. So now, let's convert this thing to angled Worker Talon mags. The parts you're going to see me install will include a longer barrel, a metal pusher, mag adapter, and a stronger 2.2 spring. None of those are included with the base model blaster. Alright, step 1, if you want to keep the same spring that's already in it, cock the blaster now, and then leave it cocked in the back half of the blaster. If you don't, just go straight ahead to removing the pins. Pull it apart, remove the spring you won't be using, take out the plunger, and now remove the entire bolt assembly. You want to grab this dart stop and put it into the breech so that this part's at the top. So your magazine will sit below that and it will stop darts coming up too far. And now you have a completely different bolt assembly when you want to use Talon mags. This actually has a metal plunger tube and metal bolt. Also note that it has a skinny pusher so you can remove the mags at any time. Line up the channels on both sides of the bolt sled. Push the whole thing in. Grab whatever spring it is you want to use. Push that into the back half of the blaster. Grab the plunger rod. Make sure the hook is facing up. And then just push it down with all your force until it catches. It took me 2 hands so I couldn't get it in the frame while I was doing it, but it's caught into the catch. Put the rear half and the front half of the blaster together. Put your pins back in. From here, take the Talon mag adapter and put it into the mag well.
like so. Now, I wouldn't recommend leaving the bolt cocked, so just put one dart into a mag, put it into the mag well, close the bolt and fire it somewhere safely into your room. By depriming the blaster, the spring's not going to get any weaker by sitting cocked for too long. The very last thing I can do is remove this suppressor. And then with that suppressor removed, I can unscrew the barrel and put the longer barrel in. Now I've got the much longer barrel. Let's thread that in and we're going to be done. That barrel takes a very long time to screw in, but it's worth it for the power upgrade.
With the Kirin converted to angled talons, let's load up one full 15 dart capacity Worker Talon mag and chrono test it with the longer barrel and 2.2 spring installed.
Remember kids, chrono testing your blasters without a scar barrel attached is cheating. I just have the Foamwork Adelaide bearing scar attached, which I used with the AEG blaster the other week. 287. 287. 283. 296. 302. 288. 288. 295. 301. 288. 299. 298. 298 again. Doing lots of dupes, isn't it? 308. Good cartridge. 287. That must be all the 15 shots.
With all of these upgrades, I got a high of 308, a low of 283, average of 293, and standard deviation of 7. Another very consistent chrono test with that standard deviation of 7. An average of 293 feet per second from a bolt action blaster that's still easy to prime is quite impressive indeed. One downside I've noticed though with the Talon conversion is that you can't really deprime the blaster now without loading in a dart and firing it. The bolt has no front support anymore, so when you go to close the breech under spring tension, it'll pull towards the side you're priming from and won't align properly with the breech. So when you're done using the blaster, just load in a dart and fire it to deprime. This didn't seem to be an issue with the shape of the shell ejecting breech, so it's specific to the upgrade to Talon mags. For my final test, let's see how precisely the Kirin shoots from a distance of 30 meters away, fully upgraded with a bearing scar attached.
Hit! I think I was just a hit. May have hit the bricks, not sure. Hit. I think that was just low. Low. I think I hit the bricks. Just low. Hit. Hit. Hit the bricks. Hit. I think they hit the board, not the bricks. Hit. 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 That's all the 15 shots. Of course, if I had have aimed higher, all of those shots that were low would have hit the target as well. So that's why we just aim at the same spot every single shot. Then we can actually get an accurate grouping whether they hit or not.
At a distance of 30 meters, all of the shots land in a very narrow line about 25 centimeters wide. I wasn't aiming quite high enough for all of the shots to hit the target, but even if you include that lowest outlier, aiming higher, they would have all hit. For the purposes of hitting an enemy player who will normally be taller than they are wide, this is a very respectable spread. I do think trying other scar barrels and dart combos could improve it even further though. But after using the Kirin with this exact setup for an entire day of gameplay and testing, what do I think of it overall? Well, as cool as it is, shell ejecting blasters just don't do it for me. I prefer practicality, but I definitely have to respect what the Kirin is capable of even in its shell ejecting config. A standard deviation of 2 and an average velocity of 245 while having the dart sitting inside a casing and then shot out of the casing into a barrel, that's impressive. Also, being able to shoot high velocity like that and also dial it down to stock Nerf levels for the young kids, that's also very impressive and not many Nerf blasters can do both. And of course, when you do upgrade it to take angled talons, install the longer barrel and more powerful spring, this becomes a 300 feet per second bolt action Nerf powerhouse of a sniper. If you're looking for something bolt action, I'd actually rate this over the bays that I showcased a couple of weeks ago. The actual operation of the bolt action is a lot more realistic too, rather than just pulling straight back on the bays. You gotta actually flip this thing up, pull back, push it forward again, and flip it back down. The Kirin also didn't need any adjusting or tweaking to make it perform well, unlike the bays. So for a bolt action Nerf sniper, this would definitely be my current recommendation for sure. You can find this at the links down below. That's all I have for you today. Consider leaving a like and subscribing, and here's 2 other videos you might enjoy. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.